Hi, I'm Andy Acton.
And I'm Chris Strevens.
This is Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. What an absolutely beautiful way to bookend this series.
Bookend seems quite appropriate with a writer, doesn't it?
It
I
does.
mean, obviously, and a dentist as well. But it was just great, wasn't it?
Yeah, I just thought the interrelationship between performance and dentist, we've had that crop up a number of times through the guests we've had, but what a fabulous way to bring them together in the way it happened today, where you've got the importance of storytelling, performance, being kind about people, but also the clinical excellence that goes with that.
Yeah, I think for me, it's that thing is, we've known Stephen for a long time, and we know the various facets of Stephen's character and life and the things that he's done, that are not just being a dentist. And I really hope that people listen and then just go, oh, wow, there's so many layers. What's that thing that in that, what's that one? Ogres, I can't remember that. Shrek, isn't it?
Yeah,
ogres are like onions. There's layers. There are so many layers to Stephen that I just think was brilliant in the fact of, it's, as you say, it's the bookend of 200. And he was great. It was really
so
great
much
and
has changed and so much hasn't. I think there's
Yes,
so much that hasn't. It's still
people,
people, personalities, feelings, emotions. And I think the bit that has changed so much is people probably don't smoke in a surgery and dip the ash in a spittoon.
Yeah, now you have to listen for that. And the Cadillac, of course.
Of course. No, wonderful. Really,
was
really
brilliant,
good.
really
Really good. So, for the very last time, it's 7 o'clock on a Monday morning.
We are here again. And I'm not wearing my pajamas today.
No, and this is our 200th episode.
Let me get my tissues out, Andy. 200. That is like unbelievable. Imagine the number of hours that people have actually bothered to listen. Thank you very much, those of you listening, especially those who are now on their way to work.
It's pretty cool to think when we started it that we'd have got through 200 different people who've all added such value and depth and variety across the great profession of dentistry.
Indeed, and everyone has been interesting.
It sounds like we're putting massive pressure on our guests today. Build this massive expectation that it's been incredible. So
199 have been really, really interesting.
So let's get the introduction done. So today we have Dr. Stephen Hancocks OBE joining us, dentist, 20-year tenure as editor-in-chief of the BDJ Portfolio, appointed an OBA in 1997 by Her Majesty the Queen for services to the dental profession.
We'll have to talk about that.
And also an MA in Advanced Theatre Practice from the Central School of Speech and Drama, and known for his engaging lectures and after-dinner speaking.
Wow. No pressure.
Welcome, Stephen. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Andy. It's great to be here. And 200, that's a great achievement. And I think what's so wonderful is that you actually started. And that's the most difficult thing in life, starting something. It's the blank page, it's the blank screen. And you were explaining earlier that it was during lockdown and so forth. And actually, of course, COVID was a terrible thing. But out of that terrible thing has come lots of good things because it sparked creativity and people were kind of closed down. But within that small environment, they said, well, what can we still do? And you started, and here we are, 5 years and 200 episodes later.
And I think that
just before you pick up, sorry mate, just dive in. Steve, just as you've settled, could the base of your mic, could you cheat it to your left, please?
To my left,
a little bit there, tiny bit more if you can, just a tiny bit, just get it right in front of you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Sorry, you can pick up there. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
And I think that point around getting started is so important. I think so many of us, we're worried about it not being perfect. People are doing it better than me. But the only way you get good at something, I think it was Ed Sheeran, somebody said to him, how is it you write such amazing songs? It says you write 100 crap ones. And it's true, isn't it? That you have to start somewhere, and it's not going to be brilliant. But just by virtue of starting, there's no substitute for gaining experience.
None at all. And I think we're all very conscious of the word failure. None of us want to be branded as a failure. And yet when you ask people how many failures they know, they kind of go, I don't, no, I can't think of anybody. And you go, exactly, because the people who say yes, and I'm sure that's going to come up in our conversation a lot today, the people who say yes, just say yes because we'll see what happens. And they're not too exercised about whether they're going to fail or not, because they know that something will happen. And I get told off by my family regularly by saying, well, you know, something will happen. They go, oh, you always say that. I say, yeah, but has it ever not been true? And they go, no. I go, well, thank you. You know?
Yeah.
Well, if you say no, that's a full stop at the end of the sentence.
You never know what's going to happen.
It's finished.
It's finished.
Yeah.
You never know.
And I think the danger of saying no as well, at some point, people stop asking you.
Absolutely.
So those future opportunities don't arise because you're just known as somebody who isn't kind of a yes
negative
type person.
Yeah, there's no point in asking him because they'll just say.
Yeah.
We have a phrase, break the pencil. One of my friends was something to do with designing the Eurofighter. And he said the problem with a lot of designers is they'll just design until the cows come home.
Right.
And he said, basically, you have to use this thing where it says, okay, we're going to stop now.
Yeah.
We're going to break the pencil.
Okay.
And then you're going to have another pencil to do 2.0.
Lovely.
And I think it's so true. Otherwise, the danger is you try and refine and refine and refine and refine, but never get started.
Absolutely right. And sometimes to walk away is not completely, but just to take a break.
Yeah.
And come back to something. I know it's a cliche, but it is true. Just take a break for 10 minutes, a day, whatever it is. I think that's one of the great mistakes that are made with emails. You know, emails that arrive at 2 a.m, or you write at 2 a.m, and then when you get up, you kind of go, oh, I wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
Because if you got time to reflect on it and come back to it, then you might do it
especially
slightly
if there was some
differently.
wine involved. That's a really bad
particularly.
idea.
Chris and I used to work with a chap, and he was notorious for that. And we'd always say to him, "Send it to one of us.
Yes,
Draft
good.
it and
That's
send it
great.
to one of us.
That's
and then
so good.
at least you've sent the email, and then in the morning we can have a conversation
Sort
about
of
whether it's a good
cathartic, isn't
idea
it?
to actually send that email.
That's
And I think
so good.
just by virtue of sending it, gets it off your list, and it kind of gives you that
Correct.
space. But you perhaps didn't reply to the person that originally sent it.
But also that's a great illustration of teamwork and also the value of the external eye. I'm always very suspicious of any creative act that involves the same person doing everything. So films that star the person who's directed him or herself, who's written the script, who's done the costume design, who's done that, and you kind of go, okay, so who was actually putting some critical thinking on this? Well, it was all me.
Yeah, it's all your own imagining, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, and sometimes it works, but very often the value of having somebody go, I'm not sure that scene quite works. You know, what if you did something? And the same with your colleague. You know, did you really want to send that?
So
like
that just
that?
instantly made me think of, what was his name? The guy from the Monty Python, Terry Gilliam.
Yes.
Because he's completely bonkers, isn't he? He's done a few films where it's been him, and they are like,
Whoa. Yeah.
They're a bit random.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This could have been slightly different.
Yeah, maybe that could have been tempered.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Can we start with a bit about
Sure.
you? What was
Yeah,
your
of course.
upbringing like? Were there kind of clues in your early years that were going to steer you towards healthcare?
No, not in the least. Next question.
It doesn't work like this.
No, actually, getting into dentistry was, I can't really explain it, other than when I was about 12 or 13, 14, we had to write an essay in English classes and in English, either on something to do with a local industry. I was born and brought up in Hemel Hempstead. Frankly, there weren't any very interesting local industries.
No.
There's a really good ski centre there now.
There is a good ski centre.
There might have been a brewery.
There is
I'm not too sure there was a brewery.
Well, in fairness, actually, there was a huge stationery, as in writing paper and envelopes, business, John Dickinson's, that my father worked for pretty much his whole life.
Oh, okay.
So that, in retrospect, that would probably have been quite an interesting thing to write about. But anyway, I ignored that. And the other option was to write about something to do with health. And to this day, I honestly can't tell you why I chose dentistry. I really don't know.
No dentist in the family?
No dentist in the family, no connections, no medics. I think it was because I went straight to the library, school library, and picked out an encyclopedia or dictionary of health and got as far as chiropody and thought, no, I don't really fancy that. Carried on and got to gynecology, and then came back to D for dentistry. And thought, oh, dentistry, actually, I don't know anything about that. Well, that might be quite interesting. And we had a very nice, very, how shall I say, slightly eccentric family dentist. And I thought, well, I could write to him and ask him if I could come and ask some questions one day after he'd finished surgery. Not knowing then what I know now, that the last thing you want at the end of a busy day in practice is to have a spotty 13-year-old come and ask you questions. So he wrote back. I mean, this is the 1960s, so way before emails or anything. He wrote back and said, rather than that, why don't you wait till the Easter holidays and come and spend a morning with me? So, oh, crumbs, I don't know about that. But
got serious quickly, didn't it?
Well, it got very serious very quickly. And it's just like...
I was only trying to finish a project.
I know, exactly. But you kind of go, well, he's been very polite in asking that. So I'd say, so I went along and stood in the corner terrified for, the first half hour or so, and then gradually realised that it wasn't a terrible thing. It was helping people, and people went out with... happy smiles or out of pain or whatever. And we got to lunchtime. He said, well, you haven't asked me many questions. I said, well, you've been a bit busy. He said, well, you better come back this afternoon then. So I went back that afternoon, and then we had a chat during the afternoon. He said, well, do you want to come back tomorrow? So I said, yeah, okay, that's great. And so I spent most of the Easter holidays there. Wow. And towards the end of that period, he was having problems finding... He had surgery in Hemel Hempstead and one in his home in Finchley, North London. So he used to do Tuesday, Thursday in Hemel, I think it was, and then alternate Friday and Saturday mornings. And he was having trouble finding a nurse who wanted to work Saturday mornings in Hemel Hempstead. Not surprisingly, really. So he was moaning on about this. And in a cheeky moment, which characterises my life, really, cheeky chappy, I said, well, I could be your nurse on a Saturday morning. And he had this wonderful laugh like Sid James. And I'm probably going to wreck the microphone now. But he went, all right. And
that was it.
So that was it. So he bought me a little white jacket. And every other Saturday morning for several years, I was his nurse. I mean, obviously it couldn't happen now.
What were you, 14?
I was 14, I think, when I first started doing that.
Flip.
And that was how it all happened. And as I said, this was the late 1960s. And although I wasn't aware of all the economic ramifications of it, I could see that he led, quite a nice lifestyle.
He had a nice house.
Honestly, as I say, he was slightly, eccentric. I mustn't be rude about him because he was a very nice man. But he drove a Cadillac. Now you could hardly get a Cadillac down the streets in Hemel Hempstead. So very. He didn't need to advertise. He just
was him.
Oh, it's the dentist. And he had a small. He called it a yacht, which I think was a bit of an aggrandizement, but But anyway, he had a nice lifestyle. And as a child, I'd done some acting, some kind of semi-professional stuff at the Watford Palace Theatre and places. So my heart was saying, well, I want to be an actor. And my head was forming the idea that, well, if I said I wanted to be a dentist, I could earn enough money to be a dentist half the week and an actor the other half of the week, or to put myself through drama school. And so, and I have actually got that written down in a diary
Really?
from that
What,
that
you've
long
still kept your
ago.
diaries from that time?
I kept my diary.
wonderful.
There's a
started
book
keeping
there,
a diary.
Stephen. Got to be a book in there, I tell you.
Well, I'll have to run it past the lawyers, but so yeah, that was really how it all began. And what sealed it was we had careers officers in those days.
Right.
It was secondary modern school in Hemel Hempstead, and actually, again, just reverting back to the options for writing this essay, the kind of presumption was that you just go into local industry. I think they had like a conveyor belt, sort of from the fifth form common room, straight into the factories and the local industries. And so I had my careers interview, and they said, "So what are you thinking of, Hancocks?" I said, "Oh, I'm going to be a dentist," and they laughed. They actually laughed.
Wow.
What, as in they didn't think you were academically suited for it?
Said, well, because nobody said that. A secondary
so
modern
it was
school
unusual,
in was unusual. You know?
Wow.
So they laughed.
Wow.
And that was the single. It makes me tingle even now. That was the single most decisive point in my life.
Bit like that?
I'll prove
if
you
someone
wrong.
says to you, "Hey, Stephen, you can't do that." Are you a bit like?
I'm a bit like, oh, well, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to prove that I can do it.
What's funny is it came out of a work experience.
Yes.
And over the 200 people that we've
It's a
talked
lot,
to,
isn't there?
so many
Mm-hmm.
dentists today, it was the work experience
Yes.
that really they lent into it.
Mhm.
And I wonder today, you were saying in today's world, there's no way that you'd be in a surgery at that age. There's no way you'd be a nurse at that.
No.
And I think work experience seems to be kind of falling a bit by the wayside.
Mm.
And I think for people that perhaps have parents that are medical or in healthcare
Yes.
that can steer them. But what about the people like you,
Mhm.
where there was no connection to the profession and you had to find something?
Mhm.
I worry that work experience isn't the thing that's available to young people that don't have that guidance
And also, we're
anymore.
making it. I think sometimes it's a bit of this is going to get a wild one, isn't it? But it's a bit of a. Sometimes I think we try to make things a bit more complicated than they almost should be.
Yes.
And I think we end up missing out on
Mhm.
people that would be really good at those jobs. But they just don't have either the academic. I'm just thinking of nurses. Nurses in NHS or whatever. You have to have a degree, I think, now. And I just think there may be some people who would be brilliant nurses who don't have academia. But I don't know whether whether you can do now practical stuff. But it just somehow feels that, as you were saying, so many people have. The dentist was the guy who inspired me to do it.
That's I think that's absolutely key. And I think you also touched on an important area, which is the balance between academia and people, real life. Now, of course, yes, to be a dentist, doctor, or nurse, and so forth, one needs the academia, the science, and so on. But actually, healing people, treating people, dealing with people is about people skills. It's not you can't teach it. And some of the best health practitioners maybe have a slightly dodgy academic background in the sense that they're not necessarily the
top of the tree,
all A stars and all the rest of it, but they're fantastic with people. We had a wonderful prosthetics, now prosthodontics tutor, Mike Bean, and one of my favourite memories, anecdotes about him was one of my colleagues as a dental student had just fitted some full dentures, and we had to get the patient back a week later just to check the fit and check that everything was okay, and to get them signed off our quota for the number of dentures we had to do. And so this colleague who got the patient back a week later, and he said, "I've been getting on." I said, "Well, they're terrible. No, they're awful. Yeah, they're terrible. And they'd been fine when he fitted them, but obviously somebody in the family had said they're not white enough, or they're too white, or they make you look like a horse, or whatever it was. And he was kind of devastated because we needed them for our quotas. So he went over to Mr. B, and he was an archetypal English gentleman, epitome of an English gentleman. He always had a 3-piece pinstripe suit, buttonhole, you did a carnation or similar, and a white coat that was over that but open. And so my chum explained the situation. He says, "It's fine." He said, "Don't worry." He said, "Ask her to put the dentures back in, and say that you've just talked to the top consultant, and he'll be over in a moment to sort all this out and to see you." He said, "I'm not going to come immediately, because that will add to the mystery of the fact that I'm a very busy person and so on. So don't panic. Just sit there, stand next to her and smile and so on." So sure enough, this happened, and Mr. B breezed over. Madam, he said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about this mistake." He said, "Yeah, I think so too." He said, "Yes, you see, this is the department for false teeth. And the building over there is the department for people who have their own teeth for fillings and crowns and so forth. So I'm terribly sorry." And she went, "Well, these are false teeth," and took them out. And he went, "No."
Oh, brilliant. Excellent.
She put her dentures in.
And she was happy.
And she was happy.
Oh,
that's got nothing to do with academia. It's a fabulous story and was typical of his.
It's that relationship conversational thing. Yeah, we've spoken to so many. We Raj. I quote Raj's story, but Raj Rattan. I'm sure you know Raj.
Yes.
And we were at some event. I can't remember wherever it was. Dentorama, and they were talking about GDC and issues. And he said, and he says he bores all his FD students with it. He was doing. He said, and he did his training with a guy in Mill Hill, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
And he said, and basically the burr, the drill broke off in the woman's tooth, and hit the dentist. "I'm terribly sorry. I've used the best German engineering, and this is Swiss steel, and I'm afraid it's broken off." And the woman was almost apologising that her teeth were so strong.
Oh, yes.
And Raj said, "You couldn't have had that conversation unless you'd built that relationship and that ability to say, well, actually, this is the way it is." And it's exactly
That's
that.
right.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
I think being kind and nice, it's so underrated. Just showing some kindness and just being nice to people.
Yes.
It gets you so far.
Yes.
And I think it's easy to become very defensive in situations.
Well, it is, one of I've done a bit of stand-up comedy, as I think you know, and I did some stuff about dentistry, and I said, people come into the dentist and they get through the door into the surgery, and they look at the dentist and they say, "I hate dentists," and you kind of go, well, that's not really a great start to a relationship, is it? If you go into a bakery and say, "I hate bakers," you're not going to get the best loaf, are you? You're going to get the one with the burnt bottom that's at the back of the shelf. So why do patients do that? And of course, it's obvious because of anxiety and so on. And as dentists, we understand that. But to your point, yes, being kind, being nice, smiling, which of course is what dentists are so good at providing for patients, for people, is so critical to just the world we live in.
Just coming back on the stand-up. So is the stand-up in just like something like a comedy store? It wasn't dental stand-up. It was you were like putting yourself there in front of people?
A little of both. Yes.
Wow. What made you do that?
Well, it kind of sprang from going to drama school, and that gave me the confidence to get into that. And one of the things that I'd always been very nervous about was improvisation. And at drama school, we were able to have student master classes. So if a student had a particular interest, they could have one evening a week. There were rooms set aside, and and you could sign up for whatever interested you. And one colleague, Andrew, his passion was improvisation. I thought, well, that terrifies me, so I'm actually going to sign up for that one. And he was brilliant. I mean, he really was great. And we did the classes, the evenings, and he really broke my fear of improvisation. And after we'd qualified and left, he rang me up and he said, hi Stephen, how you doing? I said, yeah, great, thanks. Said, yeah. He said, you remember we used to do those improv evenings? I said, yeah. He said, would you be up for doing some improv? I said, yeah, of course, that sounds great. He said, well, a colleague of mine runs a pub theatre in North London, Kentish Town, and the production that was going to go ahead there has had to be pulled for some reason or another. So they've got 3 spare slots. And I said, we put something together. So I said, okay, that sounds great. Let me just grab my diary. He said, well, you probably won't need it. He said, what are you doing Thursday, Friday and Saturday? And I said, which Thursday, Friday, Saturday? He said, this Thursday, Friday and Saturday.
Excellent.
So we started it, and it was called Fairly Tales, so like fairy tales with an L in. And basically, we asked the audience at the beginning of each performance for 8 words, completely unprompted. And they would just call out 8 words, and we wrote them down on a big book to remind everybody what they were. And then the whole of the rest of the performance was built on those 8 words.
Fantastic.
Which, yes, was
That's true improv, isn't it?
It's true improv. I mean, we genuinely did not know at the beginning of each performance where it was going to go.
Wow.
And
you can't plan for that, can you?
No, you can't. I mean, you can practice improv, but you can't plan. And actually, if you do try and plan, it doesn't work because people, I mean, a bit like, excuse me, your so sorry. Your conversations here, if you had a rigid formula, I don't think it would work.
Yeah,
what
no,
works
you're right.
so well,
Yeah.
looking and listening to your podcasts, is that you listen and you build a relationship with your guest,
Thank you.
that you do. I mean, and I think that's why it's lasted 200 episodes because it works, because it's not rigid, it's flexible, and again, people like that. They warm to that.
So can I just go back to drama school? So
sure.
So drama school and dental school, then drama school.
Dental school first, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Well, dental school first, yes, because the head said dentistry, and did quite a lot of amateur stuff, amateur dramatics, and so on. But then the dental course is pretty intense, as you're aware. And so I found that I could do writing in between bits of dentistry, but I couldn't, go off for an evening and rehearse and perform and all that. And so, yes, did some writing, sent some of it off. Once I'd finished finals, literally, once I'd finished the written papers, started doing some creative writing, comedy writing, and sent it to the script editor, BBC TV, expecting, as it turned out, expecting him to write back and say, thank you, but no thank you. Instead of which I got a little A5 letter, which I've still got, saying, dear Mr. Hancocks, thank you for your material. Please ring me and come and see me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did. A lovely man called Ian Davidson, very sadly died, I think, a year or so ago, last year. Met him in a pub in West Hampstead, and it was a lovely evening. And he said, well, look, I'd written it in the style of the Two Ronnies. And he said, well, we haven't got any slots for that at the moment. It's all out to contracted writers. But have you thought of writing for radio? Not really, but yeah, okay. Well, there's a program called Weekending, which was a very long-running, kind of a sort of precursor to Have I Got News for You?
Right.
Anyway, long story short, started doing some writing for them. But it was another wonderful anecdote. We were sitting in this pub, and I needed just to go off to the loo, and so I did. I came back, and there was a person who'd been sitting close to us. It was kind of seating a bit like this, as you are, Andy. And when I came back, he kind of, noticeably shifted away from me, and I, didn't comment on it. So, and Ian said, "Don't worry," he said, "I just told him I was your probation officer."
Excellent.
It was really great. So he was that kind of guy. So I'm sorry, yes. So I'd kind of done that. So I'd always tried to keep in touch with it. And then in the late 90s, I was chatting, and this is again, it's about generations, and it's about people being honest with you. And we had a friend who was, I guess, in his late teens, early 20s, and he dropped out of uni. And he was trying to decide, what to do next and so on. And we were trying to help him. And quite conversationally, one evening, I said to him, "Well, come on, Anders, what are you going to do with the rest of your life?" And he said, I won't use the word he used, but, "Oh, yeah, what am I going to do with my life? What the blank have you done with your life?"
Oh.
And I'm like, "Yeah, exactly." I'm like, "Excuse me, I've got a lovely apartment here in London. I've got an OBE. I've got, a car downstairs.
I think I've done all right.
It's going quite
I think
well. I'm just, yeah." Yeah, he said, "But you're always talking about going to drama school, writing plays. What do you ever do about it? Nothing. So don't try and tell me how to run my life."
This sounds like the
until you've got
teacher
your
at
own.
school.
Exactly.
It's the same
It's
thing,
that
isn't
same
it?
thing which
Yeah,
you picked up
yeah.
on, Chris.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that kind of challenge. And we've met over the years, the three of us. And so, I don't do angry. I was incandescent. How dare you speak to me like that?
Wow.
And why? Because he told me the truth.
Yeah.
It hurt.
Nobody else.
It hurt.
Nobody else. All my friends, family had tiptoed round it.
Yeah.
So the next day, we had a terrible row, and he said, "Oh, I'm never speaking to you again." And I was working then part-time for dental protection.
Right.
And so I went into work the next day. If there are dental protection people listening, I apologise, because I used an hour out of my time to ring every drama school in London to get their prospectus.
Wow.
Met Anders again and said, "Look, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have gone off like that." He said, "No, I shouldn't have said that. But, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay." But I didn't tell him. I was still too proud to tell him what I'd done that day. But then got all the prospecti, found one, the Central School of Speech and Drama, which had this MA in advanced theatre practice, which when I now tell people in the medical field, they think it's something to do with operating
Medical
theatres. They go,
theatre.
yes. They go, oh, is this not like scrub nurse? Or is that no, different theatre.
Yes, sure.
Same skills,
yeah.
actually. But people say dentistry and acting are so different. And I go, well, yeah, you know that denture patient that is coming back for the 13th ease on their dentures at 4:45 on a Friday afternoon. They walk in the door and you go, "Hello, how are you?" If that's not acting, then
I'm surprised at how many dentists, we talk about quite often the science and the art of dentistry.
absolutely.
And obviously you learn the science at dental school, and then the art kind of sort of follows. We've spoke to dentists who, lots of musicians, dancers, a break dancer. They cover off a whole host of different things. What's your take on the performance side of your life in terms of theatre and comedy? How that has benefited you as a dentist? Would you say that you're a better dentist as a result of having that aspect of your life?
It hasn't affected my ability to cut cavities, fill them, and make crowns one jot, other than making me perhaps a more cheerful person. But I think it's enabled me to deal with people in a better way. And again, that reflects what we've been talking about over the last few minutes, that actually, and you're absolutely right, it is the art and science of dentistry. And throughout my 20 years with the BDJ, I've always tried to bring art into the BDJ and into my writing, and to encourage authors and presenters to do that as well, because I think it is very important. It widens our horizon. And so, yes, I think it has made me a I don't know, better's a strange word, but it's made me a more whole person, I think, being able to understand and appreciate art. And also we were touching on teams earlier and how important a team is. The dental team, of course, but also particularly in theatre, you're very reliant on everybody else around you. Okay, there are stars, and you know we read about the glamorous way they trash hotel rooms, or you know, demand gold beakers in their dressing room, whatever. But actually, even they will admit, if you pin them down, that they couldn't do it without the supporting cast, without the lighting guy, the sound person, and so on. So I think appreciating those aspects of creativity have certainly, and certainly in the BDJ, one of the things I learned from drama school was that there are no bad ideas. They said to us on the first day, okay, well, while you're here, you can't fail. Again, that word fail. And they said, well, you don't necessarily mean the finals, but you, whatever, can't promise that. But, you know, whatever ideas you have, they'll either be, you know, the worst idea in the world, or they'll be the most amazing idea in the world, and it will go on to be a long-running, huge Broadway success, but probably won't be either of those two. It'll be somewhere in the middle. And so you'll have an idea, and your colleagues will say politely and constructively, that's a great idea, I love that idea, but what if? And the best example I can give you of that was a project where we were writing a scene. And again, you know, I arrived as a writer thinking, well, I know I'm the writer, so I'll just write everything and everybody will do what I want them to. No. And it was a scene where the character was standing under a motorway, under a motorway like Westway, a motorway going overhead. And so the opening line was, something like, God, it's terrible standing underneath this cold, rainy motorway. And so then the rest of the class saw this, and the lighting designer said, you don't need to say that. We'll light the stage so that we've actually got the car headlights going across the top of the curtain.
Yeah.
And the sound guy said, yeah, you know, we'll have the sound of the cars going past, so you don't need to do that. And the designer said, actually, have the guy smoking a cigarette, because then the smoke of the cigarette will drift upwards and will give you the verticality of the fact that he's under the
motorway.
Using
all those different elements to achieve what were two sentences.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's just brilliant. That I would never have thought of that, but the skill and the creativity of these other team members and team players put it together. And so bringing that into the BDJ was the same thing. You've got no bad ideas. Tell me whatever it is.
Was that challenging for the BDJ? Because obviously it's an incredibly well-respected clinical journal, and you're turning up with these quite avant-garde performance-led approach.
Let's make it a different colour, blue.
Well,
whoa, stay right now, come on.
But that's the thing, isn't it? And how do you kind of manage off this kind of clinical knowledge-respected journal with trying to make it a bit more colourful and a bit more creative? In the early days, was that a challenge for you? Or was it a challenge for everybody else?
I think it was a challenge for everybody else.
You're the editor.
I think again. So we've made a very, very educational appointment by having Stephen as editor in chief. It's certainly taught us a lesson. I think they were scratching their heads a bit. I mean, the time that I first began, the BDA was in a bit of turmoil financially, and one way and another there were problems. So probably it passed unnoticed for a while. But I think I hope the benefit of it was that we consistently built good teams. Pardon me. And so the creativity of the individuals in those teams meant that we were able to produce, what is now the portfolio. And again, bouncing ideas around and going, what if we had a publication for the dental team? What if we had, a business publication? What if? And I'm sure that both of you have found the same in your line of business, that if you actually, and again, reiterating it, but you guys are very good at listening and not dismissing other people's ideas. And that's so important. And I think just being aware of that is the first step, if you like, to being successful in whatever field you're operating.
And you got recognition for your services to dentistry because you visited the Palace.
I did.
We don't get to talk to many people that have received an honour at this level at this time. So talk us through that.
For those of you who are listening, we are doffing our cap. If we had a cap to doff.
So what was that day like back in 1997?
It was absolutely fantastic. It came, the OBE came completely out of the blue. I had absolutely no idea that it was in the offing or whatever. And you receive a letter. It was just when Tony Blair's government had come in, and the letter, the envelope was 10 Downing Street. And, so, it's kind of like, that's a bit unreal anyway, that arriving on the mat. And I just thought, perhaps this is something to do with a committee. They want me to be on a dental committee or whatever. And opened up and it said,
You didn't say HMRC. That's all right.
Yeah.
Didn't say what?
Didn't say HMRC.
No, that would have been burnt. Just kidding.
Honest.
Honest. And it's very prosaically worded. It's something that the Prime Minister has it in mind to suggest to Her Majesty, if she is so inclined, to offer you.
Really?
It's kind of lots of.
Is the quality of the paper? Is it? I mean, a practical. Is it like really sort of thick, almost
really,
like vellum in a sort of way?
Absolutely, it's a lovely decal paper, and so you fill in this form to say yes if you were so inclined.
You fill in a form.
You fill it. Yeah, you have to sign to say that you would accept it.
I had no idea. No,
because you
some
you
people
can
reject
decline.
it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I think some people
Oh,
quite
wow.
famously said
Yes.
if they were ever offered.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, that's right. And so that option is there to say no, thank you very much, which I didn't do. And then but you can't tell anybody. It says in this letter you.
When did you get the letter? Before actually investiture?
Oh yes.
Is it, no, I mean, how many months in advance?
It was about 6 months, I think.
Oh, wow, so quite a long time to keep
5 or 6. Oh, well, no. They say don't tell anybody. You mustn't mention this until the list is published,
Right.
which was June.
So still a few months that you
So
got.
it was about a month. Yeah, exactly. So and it's so unreal. I mean,
Did you tell anyone?
I did tell my partner at the time. Yeah, because
swore them to secrecy.
Well, yes, primarily because it was like, well, so what's this letter from? 10 Downing Street? No, it's just nothing. But that was the only person. And then yes, it's published in the paper. We went down to Charing Cross station to get the midnight, the first edition of the Times for the day with the birthday honours in.
I'm sure you've kept it.
I've absolutely kept it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then, I rang Mum and Dad. And
wonderful!
Which was, and the day itself was fabulous. Margaret Seaward, bless her, Dame Margaret Seaward, said, "Oh, now you must." She said, "You must. They'll ask you if you want a parking space at the Palace. Say yes. Even if you don't have a car, rent one, because it means you can drive in through the front gates of Buckingham Palace." And so my father was still alive then, and so myself and my partner were in the front seats, and Mum and Dad were in the back seats, and Dad was in the Navy during the war. So I planned the route very carefully. We drove through Admiralty Arch, down the Mall, and then in through the front gates, and the policeman salutes and everything.
What a memory! What an occasion!
Fantastic!
What an event for them as well.
Oh, I mean, I do. I think to his dying day. He still don't think he believed it.
And did you receive your award from the Queen?
Actually, from now the Princess Royal, Princess Anne.
Right.
Again, just a lovely lady, and they do they video it.
Yeah.
But the part where you're actually talking to the monarchy, is kind of
private.
Private, is dubbed over, and so we're there chatting and laughing. And she's laughing away, and we're both laughing. And people who watched the video, say, well, what were you laughing about? I said, I have no idea. I cannot remember what we were talking about, or what that was about. So it will be forever a mystery. I guess.
But there's something quite charming about that as well. I think everything now is recorded, photographed, catalogued. There's something nice that we still have moments.
The mystery moments.
But it's that relationship. It goes back to that relationship and connection thing, isn't it? Obviously, somewhere, whatever you said, created a connection.
Yes.
How long did you sort of have to hang around for? Is it like you hang around for ages, or do you? Because I think you sit down somewhere, don't you? And then they sort of call you up. Is that like a long time, or?
What they do is they separate you from your guests, and the guests go into the ballroom, and there's some military music and so a military band playing, and then they brief the people who are being awarded, and it's quite. That's actually quite nerve-wracking because they say you've got to do this and this and this, and when the monarch, when Princess Anne on this occasion puts her hand out to shake your hand, that's the sign that it's over.
Right.
But you then have to walk backwards, and gentlemen bow and ladies curtsy. And he said, for those gentlemen who are following a lady, do remember that you need to bow, not curtsy, because you will have seen the lady curtsy, and it'll be in your mind, in your head. Oh, I got to curtsy. It does happen. Which, of course, then you kind of go, oh my God.
Now you're worried.
So you're trying to remember all these things, and you must say, ma'am rhymes with jam, not mom, and all this kind of stuff. But it's done with military precision, and although I'm making it sound terrifying, it was actually lovely.
Is there like drinks after or something? Do you get your thing, hold your little...
Yes, there's photographs afterwards. I don't think there was any catering or hospitality. I don't remember.
Did you go out for dinner?
Yes, Mum and Dad treated us to lunch at the Savoy.
Very lovely.
Which was so lovely. Yeah,
it's a special day.
On the OBE, was anyone ever weird with you about it?
Ever any weird?
Because some people get a bit funny about if you get rewarded. Maybe it's not the right recognised. Would be a better choice. Yes. Sometimes people get a bit odd about it, don't they? Almost like, I don't know, jealousy or something. I just wondered if anyone had that any of your friends or anyone you'd ever come across was suddenly like a little bit odd because you had an OBE.
To be honest, no, nobody's
That's good.
ever.
That's great.
That's great. I think the funniest one was my eldest nephew, who at the time was, I think, 4 or 5 or something, and his mum, my sister, was telling him, all about this, and he's got a wicked sense of humour. It's a wonderful sense of humour. And he said, OBE, what does that stand for? He said, Officer of the Order of the British Empire. He said, oh, okay. Are you sure? My sister said, yes. Why? I said, sure it's not old big ears.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. Yeah,
that's what you need.
You're a wonderful storyteller. Is that important in dentistry?
Oh, again, I think it's important to all of us as human beings. We love stories. We love soap operas. We love gossip. Gossip is just local stories. We love narratives. And again, sorry, I keep mentioning it, but it was very central to who I am today. At drama school, it really just exaggerated or brought out the importance of storytelling. And it doesn't really matter what medium you use, even social media. Okay, it's very short and snappy and so on, but it's still a story. You're still following somebody's story. And again, in terms of the way it's informed my dentistry and my writing and so on, I like to kind of have bookends. I like to begin something and then wrap it up at the end by referring back to the beginning. That's just my style, but to me that's satisfactory as a reader and as a creator. And it really partly comes from, if you watch people in bookshops, and particularly if they pick up magazines, they'll pick up a magazine, they'll look at the front cover, and then they immediately turn to the back and look at the back page. And you go, why do you do that? And it's actually to see the extent. We want to know how long this is. How long is this going to take us? So what's the weight of a book? Have I got 27 hours to read this book, or have I got 15 minutes? And I think that if you develop a style where you kind of indicate to somebody, well, we're coming to the close now, and that's linked to the beginning, then they can go, oh, okay, I know how long this is. I know what this is about.
Yeah, interesting.
So I think, again, the best films and the best plays have a kind of a nice conclusion, not necessarily nice, but a definite conclusion, a point at which you go, oh, okay,
finished as such.
It's finished, that's right. A bit like the 200th version of a podcast, really.
Yeah. Nicely done. Nicely done.
Thank you, Stephen.
Not at all. I do have to warn people, listeners, and I said this at my retirement due from the BDJ, that my primary school has now been demolished. My junior school doesn't exist anymore. My senior school, secondary school, has been razed to the ground. My dental school closed. And my retirement due from the BDA was the last event at the BDA before the BDA sold the building and moved out. So just as a warning, don't invite me to dinner.
It feels quite apt that this is our last episode, isn't it?
Exactly. There's a theme developing.
We thank Dr. Hancocks for the death knell.
It wasn't going to be the end, but it is now.
That's right. Okay.
Something that came out quite strongly through the episodes that we've done is the importance of community within dentistry. We had Kishan Jin and Kaival Patel talk a lot about the importance of their network.
Yes.
Through your career, was that important? Did you kind of take certain people with you as you moved around within the profession?
Yeah, I think that, and I've noted that in some of your guests in the podcast and connected with that completely. Yes, I think it is important because dentistry, perhaps less so nowadays than in the past, is a very isolated job.
Can be lonely.
It can be lonely. And even if you're in a group practice, you're still almost certainly in a surgery with a nurse for the majority of the time. Okay, you can break out and chat to colleagues, coffee and tea breaks and lunch breaks and so on. But it's still a soul type of profession. And so having a community is incredibly important. And I think there's been a lot of discussion in recent years about burnout and mental health issues.
Mental health came through in many episodes as well.
Definitely,
Absolutely, it did. And I think that the availability of community, however one defines that, is incredibly important. And again, I think I anticipated that you might ask me what changes have I seen in dentistry over the last half century. But I think that's one of them, the realisation that community is so important.
It's not a very British thing, asking for help,
no, it's not.
Is it? No, we're not good at that.
We're not good at that at all. No, we're not good at that. But I think that has been a big difference. And I think younger people are much more aware of that than perhaps people of my generation for that reason. That we're not very good at asking for help. I think there's still a kind of element of the wartime spirit, certainly in my
sort of stuff.
upbringing. Yes, that you just got on with it. Stop. making a fuss about it.
Well, what's your thoughts on financial literacy in dentistry? Because the reality is, you go to dental school, you come out as a well-trained clinician, and from a patient point of view, that's great for me. But even when you step into the world as an associate, or in time for many a practice owner, there isn't really much attention given and education around financial literacy. What was it like through your period in dentistry?
You described it perfectly. It was never mentioned. It was never mentioned.
It's appalling, isn't it?
I
really?
think. Well, it's very sad, I think, because and you guys will have come across this. Still, I'm sure, come across this every day in terms of the financial illiteracy of dentists, and that's not a judgment or an insult. It's merely an observation that we are not business people. That's not primarily why we went into it. We might go into it because we think it's a good standard of living, but the way to achieve a good standard of living by careful financial management is not something that we're taught or we necessarily have. And I think the business of dentistry is also, you mentioned the kind of Britishness of these things. It's kind of not very British to talk about. In America, for example, you give a tip and you give it openly. Thank you very much. Thank you, my man. Here's a tip. Take this aspirin for your pains. In this country, it's all very kind of subterfuge, isn't it? It's like you slip it under the table to somebody. So we're still, I think, very embarrassed about talking about finance.
I think in there the pressure builds, doesn't it? Because if you knew there were many other people in your situation, suddenly there's that sort of safety in numbers, isn't there?
Yes.
Whereas if nobody talks about it and you assume that you're having a terrible time, but you're one of one. Whereas if you realise you're one of many and there's lots of people experiencing something similar,
you answer your own questions, because you're the only person that you think about it. We find people that, I think we say that most people with dentistry, you can actually earn a very good living even not knowing how you made it, and also not being a wonderfully great dentist. It goes back, as you were saying right at the beginning, Stephen. It's quite often about the communication and relationship and the what you have with your patients, as opposed to, and I think you alluded to it, we say on some of the courses, we all know professors, which you will definitely know through the BDJ, that are clinically brilliant, but you would not want to drink with them. But there are other dentists who maybe not that clinically expertise, but they are a hoot. And those are the people you want to spend some time with, and those are the guys that the patients sort of gravitate to.
Oh, absolutely. And the family dentist from all those years ago that I described earlier, I mean, nowadays he would just be struck off. People indicating things to us, nice things. I mean, nowadays he would be struck off. I mean, it was in the era before cross-infection control was really considered very important. So
we didn't wear gloves.
No, absolutely no gloves. No disposable needles. So the needle would be used, the local anaesthetic needle would be used. And I remember asking him, very early on in writing this project, how do you know when to change it? And he said, well, when the patients start going, ouch.
Brilliant. He's got a bit blunt.
And he smoked consulate cigarettes, cool as a mountain stream and that. And so he put a local anaesthetic in, and then he'd stand with his arms crossed and he'd smoke a consulate in front of the patient and would reach across them and tap the ash out in the spittoon.
No.
They loved it. They absolutely loved it, because in the 1960s, dentists were terribly professional and terribly,
It just made him real, I suppose.
It made him completely real. And the Sidney James laugh.
There's going to be people rewinding this bit and going, so the dentist stood in front of the patient smoking a cigarette and tapped the ash into the spittoon.
I cross my heart. I absolutely, I witnessed it.
Isn't it amazing?
Nowadays,
I know, totally.
but within your career, how far we've come.
Oh, absolutely.
It's crazy, isn't it, to think the difference in terms of the standards.
Sure.
The
and
practice now to
technology. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
But having said that, the essentials are still true.
Yeah.
That actually being human.
Yes.
Okay, you wouldn't smoke a cigarette and tap it out in the spittoon.
Mm.
But, just being human, being connected, and we do it in different ways. We have, lovely scents or fragrances in the practice nowadays, and
But when
lovely
you pair
design,
it,
all
when you
rest of
pair it all
and-
back, what would you say is the critical skill to be successful as a dentist is?
I would say to like people, or at least be a good enough actor or actress
To pretend.
to pretend that you like people. Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's it. And to be a team player.
Mm.
I think those are the two things. The clinical dentistry, of course, is important, but actually, as dentists, I'm sure tell you when they've bought a practice or taken over a practice, they're sometimes, particularly younger colleagues, are horrified when the patients start coming in with recalls, because the standard of dentistry is not the standard that they would aspire to, and yet the patients have just, oh, Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so and so. Oh, he was such a lovely man, and we've been coming to him for 30 years, and they've got the most dreadful periodontal disease, but he was a lovely person.
But that likability, it matters, doesn't
that
it?
really matters.
Trump card.
It is.
Yeah.
Why do we go back to the same hairdresser? Why do we drive 20 miles to do that? It's because we trust them and like them.
Stephen, we've got to the stage, and this is the last time we'll be asking these two questions.
Okay.
Quite emotional.
We've asked them 199 times.
Wow. Okay.
And so for the very last time, if you can be a fly on the wall in a situation, where are you going to be and who's there?
Oh, what a lovely question. Gosh. Where would I be? I suppose I would probably be backstage somewhere, either just before or just after a performance, to listen to and gauge the real feelings of somebody that's just come off stage or come off camera or whatever to the situation. Because one of the things that got me into the theatre in the first place, as a few years actually before I got into the dentistry, was a visit to the Watford Palace Theatre to see behind the scenes.
Right.
And I remember standing so clearly. I remember standing in the wings, and there is this imaginary line between the real world, the grubby, smelly, horrible world in the wings, and this amazing world on the stage, where people in the auditorium at Watford were transported to wherever it was, Egypt, London, whatever, some fantasy place. And all it is that line, that imaginary line.
You take one step.
You take one step and you're in another world. And so being a fly on the wall before you go into that imaginary world, and when you come out of it, I think is fascinating.
It's a different sort of performance, but there's some lovely footage of Freddie Mercury and Queen heading on stage for Live Aid, and you see them walk out on stage, and it takes your breath away.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it was the old Wembley Stadium, and
yes, that's right.
There's a couple 100,000 people there, so that it must just make you stop, because so few people ever get to experience that.
And no phones.
Yes.
No phones.
Everyone was
Nobody
looking at the stage, I think.
No.
Although on the no phones thing, the US Masters has just finished and Rory McIlroy won. And I didn't realise that one of the rules of when you're on the golf course there is you're not allowed to take your phone. So on the 18th hole, when they putted, if you look at everybody who's standing there watching, all they're doing is clapping and waving their arms around, because no one's holding their phone.
Brilliant,
and it's lovely that that's one of the
rules
rules of being on the golf course.
That is great.
You have to hand in your phone.
Experience.
And it's
you
lovely.
know, experience and remember it anyway. There's so many pictures of it anyway.
Oh yeah, exactly. You don't need them. You don't need them.
No, that's right. And I think one of the, for me actually, it is a sadness, is that so many people now don't experience things. They just take videos of it.
Madness.
And you know, my partner now, husband, who's a lot younger than me, falls perfectly into that category, because he'll go, oh, this is such a beautiful landscape. This is such a beautiful scene. I said, yeah, isn't it lovely? But he's looking at it through his phone. I said, put your phone away. Just look at it. We're actually here. You don't have to show me what it looks like. I'm looking at it, but it's just the way that
the way the world is.
The way the world is.
Definitely.
So,
and our follow-up question is, you can get to meet somebody. You can sit down, have a coffee, glass of wine, whatever your drink of choice is. Who are you going to meet?
Living or dead? We always say
living or dead. Okay, well, I think it would have to be Barry Humphries, Dame Edna Everage. I have had the privilege of meeting him.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yes, on 2 occasions. But I would just cherish the opportunity to do that again.
Wow.
He's such an amazing comic genius, and yet such a gentle man. He's very quietly spoken, was very quietly spoken, very unassuming. I remember seeing him at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane in a show, and he came on as Edna in the second act, and he was preparing a barbecue on the stage. And so I was like, well, hello, darlings, we're going to have a barbie. It's gorgeous. And so he got members of the audience up, literally cutting up baguettes and so on, and buttering them and tossing salads and cutting tomatoes. And then he got somebody else, got them a chef's hat on, and they were cooking sausages. So you could smell this in the audience. Now, I don't know how many people Theatre Royal Drury Lane holds, 1,500, a couple of thousand, something like that. And he then said, or Edna said, well, look at me, I'm just going to pop into something gorgeous, and left the stage. This was a one-person show, and the star of the show left the stage with 6 people from the audience preparing a barbecue. And 2,000 people were crying with laughter, and the main person was not even on the stage.
That's talent.
To me, I just thought, I cannot believe this is happening.
I always thought Celeste Patterson was a
Celeste
very
Patterson.
underrated
He
character.
was one of my favourites.
He always had like a sausage in his pocket.
And he always looked like
all that dribble down the front.
There'll be some people listening who will have absolutely
no. You have to go and Google it. Go and Google it. It'll be worth it. It'll be worth Googling.
It's fabulous.
Stephen, thank you. That was
thank you so
absolutely
much.
wonderful.
Thank you both very much.
You were saying about bookending stories yourself, and it's lovely that we've been able to use you as our bookend.
Our bookend, rounded it off nicely.
Indeed.
Thank you very much indeed. That's brilliant.
Not at all. Thank you both very much indeed, and I look forward very much to seeing and hearing what you're going to do next. Very exciting.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.